coming out of the classroom in that video that you just played, that is the source of that terrorism charge. Now, we also expect to hear from the county sheriff a little bit later in just about a half hour or so. We did hear a little bit from him earlier today where he pushed back on some of those rumors that have been swirling around on social media and the rumors that he says he's also been hearing about the idea that they potentially got a heads up about this attack. He said, while the department did investigate some threats that were made in mid-December, they realized that those were not credible threats, that they weren't even associated to this school or even this state, he says. So he says there were no reports, there were no threats that he's aware of, but he's, of course, running down any lead that may be there. But, Katie, I think it's very clear it's very early in this investigation, but as of now, the biggest news that we just heard from that prosecutor is that 15-year-old suspect is now facing those charges and will be held until that arraignment later today.
Terrorism is a new charge in these sorts of cases.
Yeah, you know, we do have a significant problem, obviously, in this country with domestic terror, unfortunately, as we've seen. And mass shootings are a significant problem. You know, I think the question about terrorism, and we don't know the facts that the prosecution has and that the police are finding. What we do know is that a high-capacity handgun was used. They're saying there was premeditation, there was planning. That's the suggestion of what we heard in that press conference. The question is what's behind that. But I think we have to separate out domestic terrorism from these kinds of children who are committing mass shootings, which indicate a different kind of societal problem. That 15-year-old, I don't know anything about him. All we know is that there's life that has been lost that we can't get back, that the acts were wrong. There is a statute in California that says you have to take steps to keep weapons away from minors in your home. That's why we're hearing about the parents. There's so much we don't know here, but I think we want to be very careful to understand the underlying problem, which is guns.
You talk about the statute to keep weapons away from minors, and the parents potentially being charged. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember another instance in recent memory in one of these big cases where the parents have been charged. It feels like this would be a real line in the sand, a real alert to parents. Hey, you got to take this stuff seriously.
Well, you know, as you know, Katie, every state makes its own criminal laws. And that means in the state of California, the state of California has been actively legislating, trying to control gun violence. In fact, it's a state that has banned, high-capacity ammunition magazines. And in fact, the Ninth Circuit has just said, upheld its ban. These are steps that it's taken to try to protect against these kinds of mass shooting incidents. But it also has a law in the books that says, yeah, you got to actually, if you're going to have one at home, you have a legal responsibility to keep it out of your child's hands, or else you might be criminally liable. That's not true in every state.
What would they, if they are facing charges, what would sentencing look like if they were found guilty of those charges?
The honest truth is I don't know, since I don't practice law in California. We will find out, but I will say this.
Michigan.
In Michigan, sorry. I will say this, that it is incredibly important to have responsibility, obviously, and legal responsibility about how you're handling guns. It is a very different issue about whether we're willing to take the steps to make it harder for these kinds of guns that have a high capacity to kill large numbers of people in a short amount of time. We have literally 1,400 kids killed every year as a result of these kinds of shootings. That is unacceptable.
There have been dozens of school shootings this year alone. Chris Brown of Brady, in reading your reaction, we got a bit of it to the show before we began. You were mentioning how on Black Friday, parents were buying presents for kids that they no longer have because of this tragedy. And on Black Friday, the father of this suspect allegedly bought this gun.
Yeah, exactly. And it's heartbreaking, and it is infuriating. I'm, like so many Americans, on the verge of tears thinking about those families of those 4 children lost, who dropped them at school that day and will never see them again, who probably have presents sitting there waiting for them. And this father purchased this gun. I want to know how. I want to know why. I want to know whether the dealer asked questions about why he was purchasing the gun. Did he buy it for himself or his son? as Maya's saying, yes, we have to understand that safe storage saves lives. You know, Katie, 75% of school shooters obtain their gun from a home.